My name is Julia Morgan, and I grew up in a small blue house on Maple Street in Cleveland, Ohio, in America. The porch steps groaned like old floorboards in a library, and the screen door never shut softly. My father, Robert, loved quiet, the kind that fills a room after a clock stops. My mother, Linda, loved rules written in neat lines on the fridge. My older sister, Claire, was their gold star, perfect grades, perfect smile, perfect future. I was not perfect. I was the girl who stayed up late to write papers with coffee rings on the pages, who underlined books until the margins looked like rain. I did my chores, but my mind lived somewhere else, somewhere like New York City, where tall buildings could hold big dreams without shame. On the morning of graduation, Boston felt bright and large, like the inside of a bell. Banners hung from the rafters in the hall. The air smelled like new paper and roses. My friends, Olivia, Grace, and Daniel, waved from 2 rows back and sent me small, brave smiles. I kept breathing slowly, counting to 4 as my professor once taught me. I wore the black gown that never fits anyone quite right, and a cap that kept threatening to tilt off my head. When I tucked my hair behind my ear, I could feel my pulse there, jumping like a small bird. After the speeches, my parents led me toward a quiet corner near the stage. The crowd buzzed like the inside of a hive. My mother handed me a long, white box tied with a gold ribbon. "Open it," she said, voice stiff with pride that felt thin. I slid the ribbon off and lifted the lid. Inside was a folder, the kind that holds a certificate. For one bright second, I saw a future where they would say they believed in me all along. I opened the folder. The paper said I failed. The letters were heavy, black, final. My mother lifted her chin, as if to stop tears that were not coming. My father pointed at me, his fingers sharp and certain. "You failed girl can never surpass your sister," he said. His words landed like stones in my stomach. My face went hot. My hands shook. For a moment, the room narrowed to that one line on the paper, as if the world had turned into a tunnel with no exit. I wanted to sit down and let the chair hold me up. I wanted to leave the hall and walk into the bright Boston afternoon and keep walking until I found water and a quiet bench. Claire stood to the side with her arms crossed, calm as if everything was simply proving her right. I swallowed and tried to make my voice steady. "This can't be right," I said. My mother frowned. "You always reach too high, Julia. This is what happens." Then the loudspeaker crackled, and a hand tapped the microphone. A voice filled the hall. "Valedictorian, top of the university, Julia Morgan." The crowd clapped and then stood, the sound rising like a wave. My friend shouted my name. I stared at the false paper in my hands, then at my parents. My father lowered his finger as if it had become too heavy to hold up. My mother's mouth opened, closed, opened again. Claire's face went still, like a mask. I walked to the stage with my legs shaking, but moving anyway. The dean smiled and pressed the real certificate into my hand. Sealed. Signed. My name is right there, bright and true. I felt the weight of it, not like a burden, but like a key. Flashbulbs popped. I heard Olivia laugh out loud. I heard Grace whistle, high and proud. Daniel clapped so hard his ring hit his palm. When I looked out at the sea of faces, something inside me stood up straighter. The house on Maple Street was still part of me. The porch, the rules, the quiet, the long nights. But I was also this person under the lights, holding proof of who I was and what I had done. I thought of America stretching wide, of cities I had not seen yet, of work I had not started yet, of money I would someday earn in dollars and spend on a life that fit me. For a heartbeat, I even thought of Europe, far away and possible. I smiled, stepped to the microphone, and said thank you. The hall answered back, and the sound washed over me like a clear wind. The lobby outside the hall felt like a train station at dusk. Voices, footsteps, the rustle of paper. Recruiters stood in neat lines like taxis at night, each one with a sign and a smile. A woman in a navy suit stepped toward me first. "Julia? I'm Sarah Miles, New York office." Her handshake was warm and steady. "We've followed your work all year. We'd like to bring you on. Base salary $115,000, signing bonus $10,000, relocation covered. The numbers sounded like a new language I already knew. I felt the floor hold me up. I thought of our small blue house on Maple Street in Cleveland, America, and the way the porch would sigh under my steps. I thought of the nights I read by a weak lamp while winter sat outside like a guard. Before I could speak, my parents reached us. My mother, Linda, stood very straight, a careful smile on her face. "You misread that first paper, darling," she said to me, as if the false certificate had been a balloon that slipped from her hand. It was only a joke. My father, Robert, set his jaw and stared at Sarah's badge like it had done something wrong. "Enough of this drama," he said. "You will come home tonight. You will apologize to your sister." Claire stood just behind them, arms folded, quiet and sharp as a pin. I looked at Sarah's card. I looked at my family. In that small, noisy square of the lobby, two paths lay in front of me like doors. One door led back to the old house with the creaking porch and the strict list on the fridge. The other door opened toward New York City, America, where the streets ran long and the buildings kept secrets. I remembered every time they told me to stay in my lane, to lower my voice, to quit dreaming so loud because dreams cost money and money was not for girls like me. I remembered how it felt when the loudspeaker said my name and the hall rose to its feet. I put the fake paper back in its box and closed the lid like you close the cover on a story that is over. "No," I said. My voice did not shake. "I'm choosing my life." Sarah did not speak. She only gave the faintest nod, as if to say, "I see you." My mother's smile cracked. "You don't mean that," she said. "You're tired. Family knows best." My father's finger came up again, a hard line in the air. "You will not make a fool of us," he said. Claire's eyes slid to mine. There was no sister in them, only a small cold mirror. Olivia and Grace came to my side like the tide, quiet but firm. Daniel stood nearby, ready, as if a friend could be a wall when you needed one. I thought of the dollars that would cover rent and food and a train pass, the dollars that would become a small pile in a bank and grow into something that looked like a home with a door that locked from the inside. I thought, too, of Europe for a breath, a trip one day to London, paying in pounds and laughing under gray skies. But my next step, my real step, was here in America. I turned to Sarah. "I accept," I said, and my chest opened like a window. We walked to a quiet table by the glass doors. I read the offer twice, then signed my name. The pen moved like it had waited for this road all along. Sarah smiled and slid a neat folder toward me. "Welcome to New York," she said. "We'll book your flight this week. Take the weekend to rest. Monday, send your details." I nodded, though what I felt was not rest. It was wakefulness. It was the clean light that follows a storm. When I stood, my parents were still there. They looked smaller, not because they had changed, but because I had stepped back far enough to see them whole. They tried to convince me. I would later tell myself at my new kitchen table, but I did not listen. I was done asking for permission to be who I already was. I hugged Olivia, Grace, and Daniel. We walked out into the Boston afternoon, and the sun fell across the sidewalk like a promise. I did not go home to Maple Street. I went forward. 2 months after graduation, I moved to New York City, America. The firm's office sat on Fifth Avenue, tall glass and clean lines, with doors that opened like they knew your name. My team lead, Marcus Hayes, had quick eyes and a calm voice. "Hold your ground," he told me after my first meeting. "Say the point once, clear and short, then stop." My mentor, Sophia Bennett, believed in notes and plans. "All mess can be sorted," she said, handing me a legal pad. "Start with the first true thing." I worked late most nights, but I slept like a stone when I reached my small rental in the East Village. On Fridays, I walked along the water and counted yellow cabs the way other people count stars. Each one felt like a promise that the city would keep moving, and so would I. The first months were about numbers. My salary came in and I split it like a pie: rent, food, subway pass, savings, a little joy fund for coffee, and secondhand books. By October, I had saved $18,000. By March, the total read $32,400. I wrote the numbers on sticky notes and tucked them in a drawer. I did not buy fancy shoes. I packed my lunch, turkey sandwiches, apples, and a square of chocolate. I found a used desk for $60 and a chair for $35. I made a quiet list and taped it to my fridge. House, freedom, calm. Each morning, I touched those 3 words with my fingertips as if I could press them into the day ahead. My friends kept me steady. Olivia Wright worked in publishing and knew every cheap cafe with strong coffee. Grace Turner did museum tours and could make any painting feel like a secret letter. Daniel Reed fixed small things in my apartment just to be kind, loose handles, a stubborn window. On Sundays, we sat in Washington Square Park and watched dogs run in happy circles. When I told them I was saving for a house, they did not laugh. Olivia said, "Name the goal." Grace said, "Cut 1 cost a week." Daniel said, "I'll help you move when the day comes." We spoke like we were laying brick. In April, Sophia asked me to lead a small project. The client was demanding and the timeline was short. "You'll be fine," she said. "Use your list." First true thing. I kept the plan simple and the updates clear. When we delivered, the client sent a short note that said, "Better than we hoped." The firm gave me a small bonus, $3,000 after taxes. I sent $2,500 straight to savings and left $500 for a weekend treat. We bought pizza by the river and split a bottle of soda. It tasted like graduation felt, sharp and sweet. By May, house listings became my evening reading. Manhattan was too high for my budget, but Jersey City called to me from across the water. It had brick row houses and small yards and a view that turned glass towers into a skyline. I took the ferry across the Hudson after work and walked quiet blocks as the air cooled. On a corner street, I saw it. A small brick house with a maple tree leaning over a tiny yard. 2 windows faced the street like open eyes. The sign read, "For sale, agent Henry Collins." I wrote down the number and stood there longer than I meant to, as if the house might notice me and tilt its head. Henry met me the next afternoon. He had silver hair and a gentle way of speaking. "It's been owned by one family for 20 years, he said. "They took care of it." The kitchen had old oak cabinets and a window that framed the maple leaves like a painting. The living room was bright at noon and soft at 5. The upstairs held 2 small bedrooms, one with a slanted ceiling that made me think of a desk by a lamp. In the basement, the concrete floor was clean, and the pipes didn't groan when the water ran. The price was high for me, but not foolish. With an $80,000 down payment, the mortgage would sit at a number I could carry. Closing costs would bite, maybe $9,000. I opened my notebook and did the math right there. If I kept a $12,000 emergency fund, I would still have enough to breathe. Henry watched me draw small boxes around the numbers. "You're careful," he said. "You'll make a good owner." I called Sophia that evening. "If it feels like a match," she said, "put in an offer. Your work is steady. You plan ahead. You can do this." Marcus added, "Negotiate repairs, not just the price. Make the house prove itself." I smiled at the phone. I felt held up by people who wanted me to rise. The inspection came on a rainy Tuesday. The inspector, a woman named Maria Lane, wore a blue cap and carried a flashlight like a sword. She tapped the beams and tested outlets and made notes in neat lines. "Roof is solid for 5 years at least," she said. "Boiler is young. There's a loose railing on the back steps, but that's a small fix." Her invoice was $450. I paid it without a flinch. When the report arrived, I asked Henry to request a $1,500 credit for the railing and a few minor updates. The sellers agreed. We set the closing for the 3rd Friday in May. On closing day, the conference room smelled like fresh paper. I signed my name over and over until it looked like a tiny river. The numbers moved from one account to another: down payment, fees, taxes, dollars I had earned moving into wood and brick. At last, the attorney slid a small envelope toward me. The keys inside were warm, as if they had been waiting for my hand. I walked out into the bright afternoon and stood on the sidewalk with the envelope pressed to my heart. Julia's house, I said out loud, and my voice did not shake. I moved in with help from everyone I loved. Olivia carried boxes labeled books and kitchen. Grace brought 2 framed prints and hung them level. Daniel fixed a loose cabinet and laughed when the screwdriver slipped. We ate takeout at the secondhand oak table I found for $120. The first night, I slept on a mattress on the floor and listened to the house breathe. It was not like the old porch in Cleveland that creaked at every step. This house hummed, a low, steady sound like a song I finally knew. The next weeks were simple and full. I painted the bedroom a soft gray and the living room a light cream. I put a lamp in the front window that glowed like a lighthouse when I came home late. I planted herbs in the yard, basil, mint, a brave rosemary, and watched the maple throw dappled shade on the soil. On the fridge, I taped a new list. Pay on time, keep the roof strong, invite joy. Olivia brought a plant and named it Victory. Grace wrote on an index card, Julia's house, no fear allowed, and tucked it next to the light switch. Daniel left a hammer on a shelf with a note, for anything that tries you. On Saturdays, I rode the ferry to Manhattan and back just to feel the water under me. The skyline looked like a set of open doors. I thought of Europe once or twice, London one day, paying in pounds and walking along the Thames, but my feet knew the way home from the pier. This was my country, my city, my small bright house. When I unlocked the door each night, I felt the click in my palm and the answer in my chest. I had chosen my life, and the life had answered yes. On a quiet Sunday, I sat at my oak table and wrote a letter to my parents. I did not plan to mail it. I wrote for myself, to clear the air inside my own head. The house was calm. The afternoon light lay across the floor like a pale rug, and the maple outside moved in a soft wind. I set a mug of tea on a coaster and began with their names, Robert and Linda, and then my hand found its rhythm. I wrote that I lived in America in a home I paid for with my work, that I made my own coffee and saved my own dollars and walked to the ferry with a head that felt steady. I wrote that my boss respected me, that my friends cheered for me, and that I could finally hear my voice without anyone turning it down. I wrote about the box at graduation and the fake paper that said I failed, how the letters stabbed like thorns, and how the loudspeaker said my name anyway. I wrote that I could not forget the pointing finger, the sentence that cut me down in front of a crowd. You failed girl can never surpass your sister. I wrote that I did not need to surpass Claire, that I only needed to stand as myself. I wrote that when I walked to the stage and took the true certificate, sealed and signed, it felt like a key in my hand that fit a lock I had been trying for years. I wrote that I chose my life and kept on choosing it, even when they asked me to turn back. When I placed the pen down, a warm peace filled the room. I slipped the letter into a plain envelope and put it in the back of a drawer. I made more tea and watered Victory, the plant Olivia brought on moving day. In the yard, I leaned my back against the maple and looked up through the green canopy. I could hear the city beyond the fence, faint horns, a dog, a far train. Somewhere above, a plane crossed west, deeper into America, where roads split and join and carry you where you decide to go. I thought of the girl I had been in Cleveland, walking the creaking porch in circles. I thought of the woman I was now, standing on my own floor with my own keys. That night, my phone rang. Sophia's voice came bright and direct. We're opening a branch in Chicago, she said. If you want it, relocation is covered up to $7,500 and your salary rises to $130,000. Think about it. My first reaction was not fear. It was a clear bell of possibility. I pictured the skyline by the lake, the sweep of wide streets, the clean cold of winter. I also pictured my small brick house in Jersey City, the maple tree, the ferry, and the lamp in my front window that glowed like a lighthouse when I came home late. I told Sophia I would decide in my own time. She understood. Make a list, she said, as always. First true thing. After the call, I walked from room to room, touching the walls with my fingertips. In the kitchen, I ran a hand over the oak cabinets. In the living room, I stood in the square of lamplight. In my bedroom, I sat on the end of the bed and listened to the quiet. The house did not ask me to shrink. It did not measure me against anyone. It let me fill it with my steps, my breath, my plans. The next day, I told the people who had lifted me. Olivia said, "If you go, I'll make you a reading list for the flight." Grace said, "I'll map every free museum day from here to Chicago." Daniel said, "I can drive a rental truck and load every box with care." Marcus called and said, "You can lead from any city if you remember your voice." I sat with a notebook and did money math as I always do. The numbers were plain and kind. With $130,000 a year, taxes accounted for, the mortgage steady, and living costs adjusted, I would have room to save more dollars. I could build the fund that keeps the roof strong. I could plan for a visit to Europe next year. Maybe London at last, where the signs show prices in pounds and rain makes the street shine. Still, I did not want to run for my life to prove I could. I wanted to move only if the move matched my heart. On Tuesday, I walked to the pier after work, bought a hot pretzel for $3, and ate it slowly while the ferry rocked. The skyline looked like open doors. I thought of Chicago's music and wind, of new colleagues and new streets. I also thought of the way the stoop of my own house fit the curve of my back when I sat to tie my shoes. The best choice, I decided, would not be between fear and bravery. It would be between two kinds of growth. That weekend, I invited everyone over. We put a cheap blue cloth on the oak table. Olivia brought a lemon pie. Grace arrived with a simple bouquet. Daniel carried a toolbox, because he always does. We ate and laughed and told the kind of stories that braid time. Then I asked them to give me one sentence of advice. Olivia said, "Choose the life that lets you write more pages." Grace said, "Choose the life that makes museums of your days." Daniel said, "Choose the life you can maintain on a Monday." I wrote all 3 sentences on an index card and taped it to the fridge under my old list. Pay on time, keep the roof strong, invite joy. On Sunday night, I picked up the draft letter from the drawer and read it once. I added a last line for myself. I do not owe anyone a smaller dream, so they feel larger next to me. I signed it with love and set it back. In the morning, I called Sophia. "I'll take the Chicago role," I said, and felt my voice ring true. I want to learn to lead a new team. I want to test my skills in the fresh air. I'll keep my house and rent it to a friend while I'm gone. I'll return when the time is right. Sophia exhaled.
"Perfect," she said.
"We'll put the paperwork in motion." By the end of the week, the plan was neat. Relocation covered up to $7,500, a start date that left me time to pack with care, and a raise to $130,000 on day 1. Olivia's cousin, a calm soul with paint on her jeans and a library card in her pocket, signed a lease to rent the house for a fair amount that matched the mortgage and left a margin. Daniel changed the back step railing. Grace labeled boxes in her neat handwriting. I booked a one-way flight and a second seat for Victory, who would travel with careful hands. On my last night in the house before the move, I walked through each room with the lights low. The lamp in the front window sent a warm square into the street. I stood by the maple tree and pressed my palm to its trunk. "Keep watch," I whispered. Inside, I placed my keys on the table for the tenant, then tucked a note under them. "This house is good. Treat it with care. It will treat you the same." I locked the door, held the spare key on my ring, and turned toward the future. This is my story, and I am the one telling it. The loudest sound in my life is not the loudspeaker anymore. It is my own voice, steady and clear, saying yes to the door I open and no to the door I leave behind. America stretches ahead like a wide road. One day, I will cross the ocean to Europe and spend a few pounds on a simple lunch and laugh at the gray sky. For now, I board a plane with my name on the ticket, my work in my bag, and my next chapter ready to be lived.